the National Defense Authorization Act. That passed yesterday in the House, and I think the Senate the day before. You'd written a piece earlier in the week that the Congressional Progressive Caucus had basically said we're not going to vote for this. I think primarily around Section 702. But there may have been more. Tell us how that worked out.
The broader issue is that all year long there has been this bipartisan agreement that we didn't want to continue this warrantless spying program under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act that keeps getting American citizens, U.S. persons, caught up in the dragnet. The FBI has disclosed hundreds of thousands of violations because they're just searching on U.S. people that basically all of these FISA intercepts, whether it's emails or audio, go into a database, and it's a searchable database. And the FBI can just pull from it if they want to look for things that have nothing to do with foreign intelligence, like gang surveillance. If they want to, I believe there were some queries that were put on donors to a political campaign. There's just been tremendous abuse of this particular section of the FISA law. And it was expiring at the end of this year, which gave this bipartisan group an opportunity to really reform it and to put in the safeguards needed so that Americans aren't being spied on. And, throughout the year, different bills were being put together, and it looked like it was coming down to two bills. There was going to be a bill in the judiciary. It came out of the House Judiciary Committee, passed 35-2 out of the House Judiciary, and it had real teeth for reform. It was on a bipartisan basis. You had Jim Jordan and Jerry Nadler coming together on this bill. And then you had this thing at the House Intelligence Committee, which was just sort of a conduit for the intelligence community to say they were reforming something without actually doing it. And so at the beginning of the week, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, did two things. The first thing he did is he said, all right, well, we need more time to figure out which one of these we're going to put forward. So let's just put an extension into the defense bill, which was moving. It's a must-pass bill, passes every year for the last 62 years. So let's just put an extension until April of this FISA provision into the NDAA, and in April we'll take care of it. And the second thing he did is he said, okay, I'm going to put the House Intelligence Bill and the House Judiciary Bill up for a vote, and whatever gets more votes, that becomes our baseline bill. This is a process called Queen of the Hill. This is something that's done periodically in Congress. Well,
and by baseline bill, you mean the bill that it's going to be extended to the 18th, but it's until April, according to this plan. But the baseline bill means then you can put amendments and work off of that bill.
The substitute, it would expire, but then this would take action. Whatever it was, whether it was the Judiciary Bill or the Intelligence
Okay,
Bill.
so if nothing happens by April, the default bill ends up being this bill. Is that it?
Well, it would have to pass. Something has to pass after April, right? So either it expires and you can't do this anymore, or they extend it, or they pass a bill to replace it, a substitute, and that would have to pass the House and Senate and get signed by the president. So what happened is that the Republicans, this is a very familiar story, they got so mad at one another about having to put themselves on the record for one bill or the other, and there was so much infighting, and people wanted Mike Johnson to just take a side, that he ended up pulling both bills. So they're off the table completely. So now all that's left is this extension to April, but it's not really an extension to April, and here's why. There's an annual recertification process for FISA and for this section of FISA that happens every April. And once that recertification is in place, all wiretaps can continue for a year until the next annual certification. So this 4-month extension is actually really a 16-month extension. It takes us into 2025. It takes us into the next Congress, and it takes us potentially into a new president. And so this is why, folks in both parties were so angry about this, that this really relieves the pressure to extend this and to do something about this FISA situation in this Congress. And so the Progressive Caucus was against it. A lot of people on the far right were against it. However, it was attached to a must-pass bill. It was attached to the defense bill. Nobody likes to vote against the defense bill. And but it was very telling what ended up happening. So in the Senate, if a provision this was done through a conference committee. So the House passed a version of the NDAA, the Senate passed a version of the NDAA, and then they had a conference and they put together a final bill. If they stick something in that is not in either the House bill or the Senate bill, which is what they did with this FISA extension, there is a point of order that can be raised and say that's not legal. You got to take that out of the bill. Then you can, the Senate can waive that point of order. So there was a vote, and it needed 60 votes, that if it was unsuccessful, the FISA thing would have come out. The extension would have come out. That passed 65-35. So it barely passed. And a lot of your friends, a lot of your people that you wouldn't think would be for warrantless spying voted for that. And I put the rundown on Twitter, but Fetterman voted for it. The Pennsylvania senators, New Hampshire senators, both New York senators, both California senators. It was a bipartisan way to keep this extension in. And so then the FISA bill passed, or the NDA passed with 87 votes, I think, in the Senate. And then in the House, there was another opportunity because they tried to do it quickly to get out of town under what they call suspension of the rules. So it needed a 2/3 vote in the House, and it got 310 votes, which was barely over the line of that, with over 100 people voting no on both sides of the aisle. But the upshot is that now we have this FISA warrantless spying extended through April, but really kind of longer. And so it's unclear whether, even though there is majority support in both houses, is what we're told, to reform this process, I'm not sure it's going to get reformed.
It doesn't feel like there's a majority of support to reform it in both houses, or did they just get outmaneuvered?
I think they got outmaneuvered. I mean, when you put it into a bill that supports the troops, right? When you put it into a bill that always passes, that has a lot of goodies in it for every member of Congress, it's difficult for them to vote against that.
Right.
Now, I mean, the separation vote in the Senate does show that there's significant support against it, but maybe not full support against it. But people who voted for that can justify it by saying, oh, well, that's just a short-term thing. We can't let this completely expire, and we are going to reform it in April. But we'll see if that's actually true.
Mike Johnson really seems to be good at punting.
Oh, yeah, that's the only thing he's good at. That's the only thing he's good at. There have been, now with the NDAA, there have been 23 bills that have passed since the beginning of the 118th Congress.
Will you put that in context to us? I mean, because that seems like, that is
not a lot.
I've never passed a law myself.
The context is, some of those are namings of federal buildings, right? Like naming things after people. Some of those are the three that would be seen as not minor tweaks are the extension of the debt limit, the extension of government funding in September, and the extension of government funding in November. Basically, punting has been the main activity, and also sort of acting like a neighborhood watch program by censuring people and expelling people and stuff like that. That's really all this Congress has done.
According to Wikipedia, Congress enacts somewhere between 200 and 600 statutes during its biennial terms.
Right. So we're below that pace.
Significantly, it would appear.
Yeah.